You don't ever stop paying dues, in my opinion. You're always paying your dues. There's no such thing as, oh, I paid my dues. I did it all. I put in my work. Nah, you didn't.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome. You're listening to Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio, episode 608, with my guest today, Sensei Mark Parra. I am Jeremy Lesniak. I'm your host for the show. I'm the founder of Whistlekick. I love martial arts, and that's why we do all the things that we do. We do a lot of things. You want to know the full list of things? Go to whistlekick.com. There are a bunch of links, tabs, images, folders, redirects, all kinds of techie, webby things that will connect you from that website to all the stuff that we've got going on. Because martial arts radio is just one of the things that we do. Whistlekickmartialartsradio.com, of course, is the place to go to find more about this episode or any of the other shows that we've ever done. Yeah, we don't take old episodes down. You can go back to episode 1. You can hear how rough my interview style was back then. You can go to episode 100 when I was interviewed. You could go to episode 500 when we did the martial arts time capsule. Lots of cool stuff going on. We've done a lot for a long time. And if that means something to you, if this show and the other things that we're doing at Whistlekick mean something to you, maybe you'll consider helping us out. There are a bunch of ways you can do it. You could buy something. Use the code podcast15. You could tell somebody about what we're doing. Word of mouth is still the best thing for us. You could suggest a guest or a topic for the show. You could leave a review somewhere, or you might consider supporting us financially through Patreon. patreon.com/whistlekick. That's where you go. You can get in as little as $2 a month. And yeah, it's set up to be a recurring thing, but that doesn't mean that you can't do it one time. Or honestly, we've got a tip jar set up at Martial Arts Radio website, so you could do it over there too. But when you contribute with Patreon, it's easy, it's recurring, and you get access to exclusive content you do not find anywhere else. Exclusive audio, exclusive video, behind the scenes on not just the company, but the show. If you're a fan of this show, if you find yourself listening to every episode, I got to say, not only are you going to support us, help us out, throwing a few bucks a month our way, but I will all but guarantee that you will find value in the additional content, because I look at the people that are subscribing, and it is rare that people unsubscribe. People that come along, stick along. That's not even a sentence, but we're going to run with it. Stick around for a while. So there you go. Now, over the years, we've had a number of guests come on who tell great stories. Just about everybody has told great stories. And sometimes we have folks come on the show and they're telling a story, and then all of a sudden, bam, something comes out of left field. And I'm standing here saying, wait a second, what? What's going on? And this was one of those episodes. We had a few moments in here where my jaw kind of dropped, where I kind of wish we were doing this in video, because you would have seen me flabbergasted. There's a good word. Well, I hope you enjoy the episode. I hope that you find as much joy in being flabbergasted as I do, and I'll see you during the outro. Sensei Parra, welcome to Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio.
Thank you very much.
It's great to have you here. And so you're in Southern California. What's going on? What's going on there? It's pretty much always amazing weather. Are you near San Diego? That's what I'm used to when people say Southern.
No, I'm in the San Fernando Valley. I'm in the city. I'm at the dojo at the House of Champions right now. Where we're located is in Van Nuys, California, which is it's a suburb of Los Angeles, the San Fernando Valley.
All right.
Yeah, it's nice here. I'm about, I don't know, maybe on a good day, 30 minutes from the beach.
That's not too bad. So 30 minutes where you are, that's, what is that, 4 miles?
Yeah, that's
4 or 5 miles? Yeah.
How did you know? Oh, yes.
I've spent a little bit of time there, and I think we all spend roughly the same amount. Maybe not all of us, but a lot of us spend a lot of the same time in traffic. But in some areas, you travel much further in that time. I mean, here I'm 30 minutes to get anywhere in Vermont, but I'm going to drive, 40 miles in that time.
Yeah.
It's a whole different world. Now, of course, we're not here to talk traffic or weather, although talking weather is never a bad thing. We're here to talk martial arts. So let's talk martial arts. Let's hit rewind on your life as a martial artist and go back to the beginning and press play? And what's the beginning like for you? How'd you get started?
Sheesh, if I go all the way back, well, how much time do we have today?
We got all the time you need.
All right. So, I grew up in San Fernando Valley in the 60s, elementary, middle school in the 70s, high school, that kind of thing. I just turned 60 2 weeks ago. So there you go. When I was a kid, I used to run around and bikes and play sports with everybody in the neighborhood. But in third grade, I'm taking you back to why martial arts for me. In third grade, I got bullied by a girl that lived on one of the routes on the way home. And one time, we got into a physical confrontation. She knocked me down, and I broke my arm. So I remember going home like dejected and da da da. Now, keep in mind, was never a fighter, so to speak, or someone that wanted to engage in that anyways. I've always been kind of happy-go-lucky kind of kid, and I'm still that way today. But if you want to know kind of where the seed was, that might have been something. I didn't want revenge or anything like that. Cut to seventh grade. I don't know how many years later, whatever. I get jumped on the way home by three of the local, knuckleheads in the neighborhood. Again, this is back in the day when you used to walk or ride your bike to school. So I remember coming home and, bloody nose, bloody lip, whatever. My mom saying, "Well, what are you crying about?" And I was like, "Oh, I got my ass kicked." And she's like, calm down, calm down. And then shortly around there, I didn't come up with a master plan. I mean, I got over it. It was history, and I remember seeing Bruce Lee. And I thought, oh, I'm 5'8", like 155 pounds right now, but I was imagine leaner then. But I thought, oh man, the little guy can kick ass. It's all about what not your size and all of that. And it got me interested in, martial arts. So I grew up on all those martial art, the Green Hornet, what else was back then? I don't know. Billy Jack. I was a fan of the hero, the guy, the do-gooder. Of course, Kung Fu, the series. I watched that. I just like the life, the way, the honor, the code of the warrior, all of that kind of stuff to, get me kind of interested in it. So the seed was there. I loved it. Those were my kind of shows. I just liked the fact that, if you knew how and what to do and you were proficient at it, you could take care of your business, So, also as a kid, I grew up with asthma. So as I looked back as an adult, I thought, where did I get this fighting spirit? That's not something that I can teach to anybody. It's kind of there or it's not. I can help students find it and tap into it. But I started questioning my own. My dad was an aggressive, although he played football in high school and was in the Air Force. And my mom was, a working mother raising me and my three siblings, and everything was kind of cool for the most part. They ended up divorcing when I was around 14 or 15. And I had great relationships with them and still do with my dad. My mom had passed maybe 4 or 5 years ago, but that was me, in a healthy relationship with my siblings. And, I wasn't in a toxic environment or anything like that. I was fine, so I found out that, I used to fight for air back in the 60s. They didn't have inhalers and all of that stuff. So when you had an asthma attack, you had to kind of use old wives' tales type things on how to try to get yourself to calm down and relax so you could finally breathe again. And in a bad scenario, you'd go to the hospital. I think you'd get a shot. Unfortunately, my older brother, Michael, had it bad, more chronic, and still, suffers or has to deal with it as an adult. Anyway, so there I tapped into my fighting spirit. One day, a good friend of mine, when I was in high school, said, I want to go check out this guy named Benny Urquidez, Benny the Jet.
Yeah.
And I said, all right, I didn't know any of these guys, anybody in that circle. So we walked back in the day, like we did with everything, a short couple miles from my house to a YMCA, North Valley YMCA, 1976 or 7 or something like that, right? Late 70s. And he was there, and he was training a bunch of students in the style. My very first style was called Kempo Shotokan. It was probably one of the first fused systems at that time. Most everything was taught either Kempo or Shotokan or Taekwondo or Kung Fu, whatever. They weren't mixing the styles yet, as far as I knew. So they had incorporated Kempo and Shotokan and created Kempo Shotokan. So I watched and I saw how hard the training was, and right away, that interested me. He had a little bit of not a military or militant type style, but the basic thing was that if you couldn't endure or suffer the workout, then don't come back. I remember him telling me that it's $30. And if you have the money, cool. If you don't like it, you can go, right? So I was there. They were known as the Urquidez. They called it the Urquidez brothers because the oldest brother, Arnold, was the highest in the pecking order, and then it went down the row. He had several brothers and his sister Lily. So we trained there, and no mats, no gloves, no shin pads. I don't even remember getting a mouth. I don't even remember having a mouth.
Pretty hardcore.
Yeah, it was old school. We did a lot of old school stuff. If he didn't like the answer, not like the answer, but if he didn't, or not he so much, because they taught as a team. Sensei Benny was a young, I want to say he was already a world champion, or he was going to be a world champion soon. He was killing all of the black belt divisions in competitions like Long Beach Internationals, which was Ed Parker's, one of his claim to fame, his tournament that ran for years, and they still run it in some format. But Benny used to have to fight the adult division because he beat kids up in his kids division. I don't even think he was 18 yet. He was already like grand champion several times, fought on U.S. teams, and back then in the days of Chuck Norris and those guys, Bob Wall, and some of the pioneers, Cecil Peoples, and all the guys that were back around then, bringing what they called point karate to different venues. We'd also compete in forms, empty hand or weapons and things like that. And not to get off track too much, but so I immediately told my buddy, I wanted to sign up. I don't think he did, but I enrolled. I trained with the Urquidez family for the first year and a half at the North Valley YMCA. It took, now keep in mind, belts were like, don't even think about. Number one, you never, as a student and as an instructor, you never ask about when your next rank is, right? It's something you don't do. So I came up with that in mind. So a year and a half later, I finally got the grade for my yellow belt. I was like, oh my God, And then I think after 3 years, I made it to a blue belt. Now, keep in mind, I'm a teenager. I'm fighting and doing competitions in the karate circuit at the time, right? Including Long Beach, which was cool. I was getting experience, getting my feet wet, learning how to be a competitor, and all along just training and doing it because I loved it. And, I worked full-time jobs my whole life, 10 years in the market industry, the grocery union. I worked for companies called Gelson's and Lucky's, Gemco. I was a grocery clerk, so I was making good money. Through my teens, I started to explore acting in my early 20s, which I still do, and I've done several movies and TV shows. I now train actors for movies. I'm currently working with a woman that's going to be a female lead in a big movie coming up that you'll see, but I'm not privy to disclose at this point.
Sure.
But I trained Sylvia Hoke, who did The Last Blade Runner. Corey Stoll, he was a star on Law and Order LA. Just, different people throughout the years. And I got to work on a bunch of movies and different levels as an actor mostly. And then later in my acting career, I started realizing I needed to put my skill sets together. So I started doing more action stuff. I've done tons of movies with guys like Olivier Gruner, Don the Dragon, Art Camacho, just on and on and on, right? So those level of movies for a long time, getting my feet wet. Benny ended up opening the Jet Center, world famous back in the day. Benny the Jet Center. And his partner was his brother Ruben and his wife, Benny's wife, and his sister Lily and her husband Blinky. And let's see, in between that and the YMCA, I trained with one of Sensei Benny's top black belts, Joe Montero. He was a drill instructor for the Marine Corps, and it was all about, just old, push-ups on your knuckles, hard training. We sparred hard. We trained hard all the time. And I ended up getting up to a brown belt in the Kempo Shotokan system before he closed his school. And Benny opened up the Jet Center, which was state of the art. I mean, there's never been a dojo built like that at that time, especially in the early 80s. Saunas and jacuzzis, locker rooms for men and women. It was at least a 10,000 square foot building, 2-story. It had chiropractor. It had a sports shop. It had a restaurant at one point. All the world champions trained there. Peter Sugarfoot Cunningham, who's a dear friend of mine, 8-time undefeated world kickboxing champion, still teaches with me to this day, actually. Matter of fact, I think he's somewhere in the dojo taking a nap. So I showed him my spot, and I said, "Hey man, I got a pillow here, Sensei. Go take a little quickie." So anyways, all the champions came through there. Kathy Long, Danny Steele, Ricky O'Kane. Lily was one of the first women professional boxing champions ever, Lily Urquidez Rodriguez. Blinky, his brother-in-law, was a champion. Used to fight guys like Bill Wallace, Joe Louis. All of those guys came through House of the Jet Center. And they all trained there. And then international fighters, as it became more renowned, started to come there just to train there. So you can imagine the pool. And keep in mind, I'm a young black belt, and I'm working with world champions, and they're much better boxers and kickers than I was as a karate man. So now I'm doing more boxing. Guys like Hector Lopez, he was a 1980 silver medalist in boxing from Mexico. He became a champion as well, professional fighter. His son, Adam Blue Nose Lopez, is now a top 10 kid, and I want to say he's won a title. But so I got all this great experience, just back in the day at the Jet Center, sparring and working out every day, all the guys around the gym. We're now in a ring. We're not on hardwood floors for the most part with tape around it, competing like they used to do, or concrete. I think it was concrete back in Long Beach. Nowadays they put mats down for whatever reason, but we fought on concrete or wood. So yeah, I got all that experience. I earned a black belt in Benny style called Yukido-kan. I was, I think, one of 16 ever to earn the rank because it just wasn't an easy task to try to hang in there. I was training for over 10 years before I got an opportunity to grade for black. So I felt, I felt like I don't want to say paid my dues because I don't think dues are paid. I think it's not like my dues were paid. You don't ever stop paying dues, in my opinion. You're always paying your dues. There's no such thing as, oh, I paid my dues. I did it all. I put in my work. Nah, you didn't. Every day means every day. And that's sort of my philosophy with my team and my students here. You know, that idea of being entitled, like I paid my dues. I'm like, you haven't done anything. What have you done?
I like
So
that.
I'm not that generation. And my parents and my students know it as well. But so yeah, I earned my black belt there, my first black belt there, and then I started teaching for Sensei Benny and mainly doing the Yukido-kan program. And I started to become very good at being a teacher. And I thought, wow, I enjoyed it. I'm a people person, but I had a special way of. I don't even know. It's just, I became one of those guys. I was around great teachers. I became a great teacher, philosopher, therapist, whatever you want to call it, as a sensei. And
All the things that an instructor is.
yeah, and I took great pride and still do in that. And I remember Sensei Benny saying, "Look, it's a privilege to be able to teach on this mat. If I ask you to come up because I'm going to do a technique on you, that's a privilege being the Yuki, right? And if you get popped a little bit, that means, your sensei respects you, And so I come from that generation. The Yukis used to kind of get, nothing excessive, but certainly was good attention getter for the students. Say, hey, and then okay, now let's work slower and more cautiously with your partner so we don't hurt each other and take that approach. But at one point when he asked me, hey, would you like to teach? I jumped on that. I became the head instructor for the program at the Jet Center, especially in the later years. As guys would come and go, I was still the last man standing. In the mid 90s, they closed the Jet Center. And basically, I was like, now what am I going to do? Right? It wasn't like, it was just a weird thing. I don't even know how to describe it, to tell you the truth. But I always thought my sensei would always be there and always teach, Hence, I'm still around after 26 years as House of Champions. I take a great amount of pride in that, especially after the last year of COVID.
Okay.
I lost my entire business last March, everything, and managed to rebuild it over the last 12 months. And now we're better and stronger than ever. But with that said, I'm a fighter and let me say warrior. And warriors never give up, and a warrior never quits. So I was built for this COVID challenges. It actually helped me tap into some silver linings, and I leaned out my staff. I used to have about 20 instructors and people that ran the front end and all that. I'm down to about less than 10. We're leaner and meaner, and I'm back in more of a lead role here again. I got to a point after running this dojo for 26 years. I have over 43 years of continuous martial arts training. I had to step back up and be that leader again. And I realized, gosh, I should have done. I didn't need COVID to be this guy. Yeah, a lesson to myself not to get out of touch with my students, my team, myself, and to be that driving force. I want to say my philosophy or my attitude is sort of the secret sauce at House of Champions. I always tell parents when they come in, or students, or pro fighters, or anybody else, you don't need to come to the world famous House of Champions to learn how to kick and punch. Anybody can teach you that. they come here for the secret sauce. We have this love, but it's dojo love, blood, sweat, and tears, is kind of our mantra. So, anyways, in 1995, or whatever it was, in the early 90s, when they closed the Jet Center down, one of the parents came to me and he said, "What are we going to do?" And I said, "I don't know. I was teaching, and keep in mind at the time, in those days, instructors didn't get paid. At least I didn't. But we were also felt like we were raised like it was a duty to give back and to teach, um, and a privilege." As I started to get my teaching skills down, so I had a job. I didn't need to make whatever to go teach karate a few days a week, right? So I taught for a few years towards the end of the Jet Center, so they got used to me being kind of their leader more than the owners themselves, because they, weren't necessarily around that much, especially in the later years. So when they closed, one of the parents said, "What are we going to do?" And I must have had about 25 kids, mostly, and some adults, that were just kind of in no man's land. And he said, "Why don't you open a dojo, Sensei?" And I said, "Me?" I said, "Now keep in mind, I'm in my early 30s. I'm going to say that was kind of my prime." But uh, so I thought about it. At the time, oddly enough, I was cast as a lead role in a new movie called Kill or Be Killed. We never ended up shooting it, but we wrote it. The producer, one of them was, oh God, who's the guy that played Potsy on Happy Days? Oh God, why can't I think of him? Not the Ron Howard character. Anyways, he was one of the producers, and another group of people came in, and da 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 da. So they gave me a check back then for 10 grand, and they wanted to hold me to do the lead in this movie. Oddly enough, one of the producers, Anson Williams, that's the guy. One of the producers, after we shopped the show, we did all these interviews with all these studios. I was at Sony, Universal, Paramount, you name it, on Warner Brothers, on and on. We did all the meetings. Anson got a director role full time in a TV show starring. Oh God, I forget. Anyway, so he said, "Hey guys, we're going to put the feature on hold." It never ended up getting done. Long story short, one of the producers, executive producers, who's still a friend of mine and an investor in the House of Champions, name is Mark Steinman. He told me, I used to train him and his family privately. He said, "Mark, if you ever have a business idea, don't hesitate to come by, to pitch it by me." So I spent a year putting together a business plan. As I was, training. Now, keep in mind, I'm kind of a sensei without a sensei. So I started exploring other arts, and I've studied with many awesome instructors. Some, I'll mention a few of them in a minute. But had I not been forced or not have to look for someone else to train with, I would still probably be training just the one system under Benny, because we came up underneath the code and the loyalty. We martial artists back then didn't train under two different masters. It just was not proper, I guess. At least that's what I was taught. Well, my philosophy nowadays is completely opposite. The more, the better. The more exposure, the better. The more great teachers you have in your life, the better. I don't care if it's a baseball coach, sensei, or whatever. So I got rid of that philosophy pretty quick, but because of that, I got to train with some great guys, and get skill sets in those arts, and da 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 da, and started to find out kind of where the holes were in my art. At the time, for me personally, where my strengths and weaknesses were, and so I started to explore. Meantime, I'm putting together my business plan. I came up with the name House of Champions. I don't know. I'm good with coming up with names. For example, when COVID hit, I came up with the Yard at the House of Champions. So, what else?
For an outdoor training environment.
Yep.
Nice.
The yard at the House of Champions. And that became cool. I put big banners. They're out there now. I built an outdoor facility that I would have never built had we not had COVID. I'm fortunate enough that I have a huge space and I have a huge area in the back, not only for parking, but for training. So I made it beautiful. We set up every day. My team takes out the benches and the tables and chairs, and we roll out our equipment, and we spread out, and we have a great facility outside, especially this time of year, as well as the amazing martial art palace of this dojo inside. I don't know if you've been on my website, www.houseofchampions.com, but you could take a tour of the dojo and go, oh, it's a beautiful setup. And I'm kind of OCD with the cleaning and making sure all the gear is always put back and that this place looks like opening day every day. But we got pretty good at it after 26 years of running the show. I'm not saying I know it all, but we have some good systems going on. So, I proposed my business plan to Mark Steinman. I sat down with him. I had all the hard costs figure out, what potential earnings were, the first quarter, saying, what payroll, Long story short, he says, I didn't even talk to him for 5 minutes. He slides a check over to me. He goes, here you go. And then he told me, and he wrote another check. He goes, this is if you need it. Cash this one too.
Wow. That's a lot of faith.
Yeah. So I was all over it. It's one thing to be a talented martial artist. Okay. That's a huge group that's kind of on, it's a fraternity of men and women on its own, us people that do martial arts. I have relationships internationally with some of the most amazing people I've ever met that are friends of mine and colleagues of mine today. And, before COVID, we'd still get together. Vince Palumbo from Adelaide, Australia. He made a huge impact in my career. And I'll tell you kind of how the style changed little by little in a second. The Grandmaster Kokoy Kinyete from Cebu City, Philippines. Amazing mentor, instructor. And then all of their people that have been training with them, automatically I'm adopted like a brother. As soon as I started training in those systems and spending time and paying my dues and, competing and teaching and propagating those arts, and just became this international community of some of the best friends that I've had through my martial art world, So, so in the early stages, I built my first little humble 2,500 square foot dojo. I took what money I had. I was very obviously careful with not wasting it. I found a lease, got the building, did the mirrors, trained on concrete for a couple months till I started making a little money. Then I put down a mat. I bought a boxing ring. I put a couple bags up. I used an old desk that I found in the alley of somebody's neighborhood. That was my desk. This is before cell phones and all too. So I got to remember, it's primitive. I did all the paperwork. I was the first one in, the last one out for the first 5 years of the House of Champions. And then, let me go back a little bit. And I don't know how much you want me to go into this, but 2 weeks in, I had a major problem with the local gang.
This sounds like a good story.
It is a good story. So
share as much as you're comfortable.
So one of the kids, again, these are high school kids, 16, 17, 18 years old. One of the kids, he came in, and this is before I knew I had a problem. He says, hey, I want to learn boxing. I said, yeah, I teach boxing here. And I started training him and his friend. Well, a couple of weeks later, the dojo's not even built yet. I'm still trying to get the dust out of the place, and teach classes and do everything marketing. And this is back when all the marketing, if you had money, was in the Yellow Pages. I don't know if you know what the Yellow Pages are, but it was a phone book that everyone used to get services. There wasn't nothing they could call or open their phone with. So the only way to get marketing outside of your signage or door hangers or flyers or going around hitting the local schools was everyone had to have an ad in the Yellow Pages. It was extremely expensive for quarter page, for eighth page or whatever. I always remember going, God, I don't know if I have enough to pay for my Yellow Pages. And I'm in the middle of the valley, so I had to be in the West book and in the East book. And at the time, the two books together was probably running me close to about $800, which was a lot of money, especially back when I first opened the school. I think I was charging $60 a month for lessons. I mean, I was like, whoa. And I gave that price forever because my martial artist in me was the one running the dojo, more than my businessman. I think I was alluding to, you could be a great martial artist, right? And then all of a sudden, the next level of that is you become a great teacher. Some of the best martial artists I know, the best resumes or world champions in whatever discipline, can't teach a lick. Okay, so keep that in mind. And then the next level is, okay, you're a great martial artist. You're an amazing teacher. Now I need you to become a businessman. So some of them, and most of them, that are great martial artists, world champions, can't run a business for a lick. And they've come and they've gone. I don't need to mention any names, and they're out there because they don't have the skill set, or they forgot to keep learning at some point. Their first philosophy is, I'm always a student first. It was just hard to manage. And then I think after you become maybe after you become a great businessman, you become a great teacher of teachers. I spend more time grooming my team than the actual student body. But I will be out there in the student body because, again, I'm the secret sauce. So you can tell I like to talk. So when I go out there, I remind them of some key important things, and I feed their soul and I feed their mental. That's sort of my niche nowadays, because my guys that I've been training, my number one guy, David Hernandez, is I've been training him over 30 years. He's got multiple black belts and skill sets, and he does it all, right? But he's a great teacher. Now he's a great organizer for students. He's helping me with new, I'm still in the not in the tech age yet, but we just recently are converting to a new app with a company that we can use our iPads around the mat and become a lot more efficient. And, I'm still writing stuff on paper and contracts or agreements. And I have folders, cabinets with students, and, I have to look up their name alphabetically opposed to hitting the tablet. But now we're converting into most all of that stuff now. So finally, so great teacher of teachers, great business people, just people. I think it's a huge skill set, and I really try to harness that and hone that with my team that I'm currently working with. And they're doing a great job. All these young guys that I started training when they were kids, they're now adults in their 30s. They're second, third degree black belts with me, and they can run many different programs, or I could put them on the front desk and they can handle a phone call or do a sign up or troubleshoot if there's a irate parent or a student or somebody's having a meltdown or whatever. They got skill sets, and so that's what I do now. I'm kind of grooming them and all that. But in 95, that gang came up one afternoon, a few carloads. They're drinking and smoking pot and outside, parked directly in front of my front door. And I'm by myself. I walk out. I might have been in my gi. I don't even remember. But I just said, hey, guys, in my happy-go-lucky attitude. I tried to welcome them and da-da-da. And right away, they gave me pushback, and they were all like, I'm like, you guys coming around? You guys want to learn some boxing? You want to learn some skills? And they're all like, oh, yeah, we'll pop a cap in your and excuse my language, but that's kind of how they came. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it, boys. Well, I see. So you're good, but look, check it out. I'm getting ready to open it I need you to take your party somewhere else. And they got smart, da-da-da-da-da. Couple of them start getting out of the car. Next thing I know, there's probably 10, 12 of these guys kind of around me. One of my guys ends up showing up. He was a Vietnam veteran. So he came out with a sword. And I'm like, oh, God, this is going to get bad. And now keep in mind, I've only been in the building for a month. I'm already thinking ahead. If this turns into a fight, I'm going to have a fight for life, and they're never going to surrender, right? They say the gang mentality, which I'm aware of and very savvy of. Long story short, it broke out into a fight. So I had two guys with me, and we're in the middle of Van Owen, if you know the San Fernando Valley. Traffic stopped in both directions. We're fighting with, I don't know, it seemed like 10 or 15 of these gangsters. And one of my guys puts the main dude in a chokehold on the ground, and the other ones are all threatening as they, this is after the beginning of the skirmish. And they're all yelling, we're going to kill you. You're dead. You're dead. And I'm trying to tell my guy, don't kill this guy. And the Vietnam veteran guy's telling them, break his neck, break it, And I'm like, dude, let him up. Finally, let him up. The kid's mom's on the side. Now imagine people on both sides of the sidewalk watching. Traffic stopped in both directions. He lets them up. The kids are all kind of dispersed. They don't want to get anywhere near us because they just got their ass beat. And nothing bad, by the way. I would say nothing bad. There were nobody that needed to go to the hospital. So they were all able to leave there on their with their own common sense. But so the main gangster and everybody else are all gone. That night, I'm teaching class. Oh, first, get this. I get a call, this is before the gang fight, from a local police officer who's doing a program called PALS. It's to help keep youth at risk off the street, mostly gangsters and things like that. And they're doing these PAL programs. I volunteered to teach them for free boxing twice a week. Now, these aren't the kids that came and attacked me, but it's just ironic that I end up having a gang problem and opening up my heart and my dojo to these young kids at risk, right? So this police officer would bring his kids in a van once or twice a week, and I would teach them boxing, right? Keep in mind, these weren't my people that were my problem. But after the fight happened that day, I called him and I said, Mike, I just want you to know we had a very intense fight with the local gang. Who are they? And I told him he goes, and he said, well, there's nothing really you can do unless they come back and they're inside your building. I said, what? I mean, all right. So I figured that much. That night, I'm in my gi. I'm teaching an adult class about 8:00 at night. I'm there with one of my team members. And he told me, they're here, Sensei. And I said, what? 4 guys all shaved down. I look out the side window. I see the car pull up. They all 4 walk out. They're Pendletoned up with the top button. They were older gangsters. These weren't the kids that came that we fought. It looked like their big brothers or somebody else, maybe higher ups in their crew, get out and they start to walk towards the front door. Now, I skipped the part, but after the fight, one of my guys came back and I said, I'm scared they're going to come back. So he came back, a couple handguns. I had a shotgun behind the desk, and I would never pull a weapon on anybody. in my life, even though I've had one pulled on me, which is another story. But I simply told my high rank to keep the class going. In my gi, I walked and I grabbed the double barrel shotgun. I walked past the front mat and they could all see me in the mirror. I had the gun to my side. I walked out the front door, I went around the corner, and I wanted them to see the barrel. My other guy was kind of covering the back door. And when they saw me come around, they all ran and jumped in the car and took off. Okay. So now I know, number one, we had a fight. Number two, they're not going to come back. They did come back. They have a plan. Long story short, the kid that I was teaching boxing to calls me the next day. He says, Sensei, they're going to come do a hit on you tomorrow. And I said, what? They're going to come do a hit on me tomorrow? Again, I call the police officer. I said, hey, we had the fight. They came back that night. Oh, nothing you can do, Mark. And I have weapons. And they threatened to kill me. Nothing you can do, Mark. If they come in, you have the right to defend yourself. Do not go outside with any kind of weapon. That was the advice from the LAPD officer. And I'm like, F that. Are you kidding me? I'm going to sit here behind my desk and they walk in and get a jump on me. I mean, that's just not how I roll. But I just thought, oh man. So I ended up calling somebody else I know who was a community leader. And he was doing gang intervention. He knew all the gangs. He was trying to do this peace treaty back in the 90s, which worked for a while. There was a lot of gang problems, a lot of deaths. His own son was killed by a gang in a drive-by. So it's a bittersweet thing. And he became a person that was trying to bring peace. And I said, hey, I had this fight. I called him because I'm desperate now. He says, what's the name of them? He goes, I'll look into it. He looked into it. He called me back. He said, you know what? I think they're just a little tiger crew, Mark. I don't, they're not like an OG, like established, bunch of killers or anything, that hold down in like MS-13 stuff. And I said, all right. Nothing he could do. I get the call that day. They're going to come do a hit on you. I'm feeling hopeless. So I call the police again. And I said, hey, this happened and that happened. Now I just got a call from a guy on the inside, says they're going to come do a hit on me today. I'm armed. I told the police officer, I'm armed. And I had two of my guys that were armed. One waited outside in a car behind my dojo. And the other one was, I don't know, he was somehow floating around somewhere. I'm in the dojo. The next day, I have a 9mm in my belt, and I have a shotgun, and I know my guys. And I'm thinking there's not going to be anybody here to come help me. Superman, Batman, they're not going to show up. So it's around 10 minutes before they start to roll up on me, and I look out the window. I see an undercover car with two cops sitting down in the seat. And that was my first sign of relief. I was like, oh my God, they're here. Oh, I can't even tell you. A sigh isn't even is an understatement. And then I looked out back and I saw on the street another undercover car with two guys. And I was like, oh God. 10 minutes later, they start to pull up in their cars and on foot. Must have been 30 of them coming from all angles. Around my dojo. The phone rings and the police officer tells me, not the one I was trying to get a hold of, some other sergeant says, Mark, stay inside, do not come outside, and do not come outside with a weapon because he's got officers everywhere. Next thing I see is black and whites, helicopter, right over my building, and gangsters running like cockroaches. A car pulls up in front of one of the undercover guys. 4 gangbangers step out, and the cops come out of their car with their weapons drawn. They put them on their knees. They arrest them. Long story short, 20 minutes later, black and white pulls up and said, it's over. Can you come with me and go identify the guys? I said, yes. put me in the back of the car. They go a block over where they ran to a house that one of the gangsters lived in. And they were all lined up on the side, on the curb, all in handcuffs. And I ID'd every one of them, even if they weren't there the original fight. So now they were charging them with terrorist threats, which is a serious offense. Minors and adults. Keep in mind, some of these guys were minors, 16, 17-year-olds with some 18, 19, 20-year-olds type of thing. As we're IDing them, police officers come out of the house with 2 5-gallon paint buckets. You know what that looks like, right? Filled to the top with AK-47 ammo. 2 partially assembled AKs and some other various weapons. And I was like, oh my God, these guys, I don't know if that was part of their plan for me, or maybe one of the kids, it's their dad's stuff. And I don't know what happened. But the officer called me the next day, said they were counting. They had to count each and every round for, to book the ammo and the weapons. He said it was over 10,000 rounds of AK-47. I was like, whoa. Okay, so cut to the chase. I'm cool. They arrested the gang, but am I going to be able to relax and run a dojo there?
And this is a month after you opened.
Yes.
I'm laughing not at that it's funny, because it's not funny. I'm laughing at the intensity. I've been an entrepreneur all my life. I've faced many difficult challenges in running a business. I've never faced anything that overwhelming, and certainly, the early days tend to be the fun days. And here you're facing this, and I'm just I can't wrap my mind around it.
Yeah, it was way more than anything I could have imagined. So, what's next? I'm there a month. I'm thinking, gosh, I don't even have the mat down yet. I just put the mirrors up. I have a boxing ring in there and an old desk from the alley. Maybe I should just move to another neighborhood and just try it somewhere else. And then, my Aries nature kicked in. And I said, if I leave here, they're going to come to Northridge. They're going to come to North Hollywood. Every time somebody comes over that wants to beef with me or whatever, I'm going to pull my tail up and I'm going to run. So I said, I'm going to make my stand here. I said, I'm staying here. I ain't going nowhere. F them. So I'm still worried. Now I'm driving to the dojo every day with a loaded gun on the seat of my car. And before I open the dojo, I'm kind of looking around, making sure someone's not standing around waiting to do something bad to me. But it was incredibly stressful, especially since I had students in the dojo. Who knows if they were going to come by, and the dojo at the time had plenty of windows, and it wasn't protected. There's no way I could protect them, and it wasn't their battle. So how can I cut to the chase? So I have a friend who was what they call an OG, from a very hardcore gang. And I won't mention any of the names of the gangs, sure, but they're still around. They've been around for a long time. And I called him and I said, hey, this is what happened, da-da-da-da-da. And I told him everything I just told you over the last 20 minutes. And he was like, what? He's like, what? He goes, eh. He goes, I'll get back to you. So he sent out his soldiers. I told him where they hung out, and I told him where I thought some of them went to school. And basically, they made their life fish for a good few weeks. And not in a nice way. His boys, when they would roll up and they started punking these guys and just bad stuff, right? And one day they got the main guy at a laundromat by himself. And that was a bad day for him. But afterwards, he called me and he said, yeah, it's done. He said, you won't have to worry about it anymore. And I was like, really? You sure? He's like, yeah, man, it's done. Trust me. If he even walks down the street, he knows he's going to have problems way worse than what he's experienced. Not just him, but people he might love, right? That whole idea. Anyways, I ended up surviving that. I
You
kind
can
of
survive
outgrew.
that as a school owner. I think you can survive anything. COVID seems,
Yeah,
I
I
don't want
got
to say
split.
trivial, but seems uh, insignificant in
Yeah,
comparison to fearing for
yes,
your life.
yeah. Well, COVID, people fear for their life. I lost all my money. I lost every single student. It was a silent ninja style of an
Mm,
attack this last year, different than what I did in '95, but as significant as a battle. In other words, my one of
sure.
my epic battles this last year. I could talk about that for a whole day, but just compare that time in my life, 26 years ago, with what's happened in the last year of my life. Maybe it made me more resilient, but the opponent was equally um, as dangerous
Mm,
or devastating. So I survived that. I've survived COVID so far, unless something new comes up, which you never know with everything here. But right now, the dojo's going great. My team's great. The students are loving it. We're better than ever. As soon as the world gets back to some better place, I think I'll be on a whole nether level, because keep in mind, I have a whole business that hasn't come back yet, that might come back or may never come back, but I can't sit around hoping for my old students to come back. You
right.
know, consequently, maybe 10% of them have come back in the last year, and they trickle in one or two, three or four a month. So and so calls, hey, I want to get my kids back in, and they're starting to come out again. So, but on top of that, I built a new business with brand new people. That's amazing. And the energy, the secret sauce is at the House of Champions. It's better than ever. But that was a crazy time. The gangs, and the idea of having to close, reopen, bodily harm for me, or me having to hurt somebody seriously. Um, all the ins and outs with the unknowns at that time was whoa, I would have never guessed it if you would have told me, hey, Mark, you get to open your own business. It's going to be world famous. It's going to be world renowned. It's going to change people's lives and impact the community forever. This legacy that is going to be bestowed on you. But you're going to have to endure the first month. And after 25 years, you're going to have to do a year of it after that again. Do you really want this? Do you really think that you're up for this? And I would have to say yes. Definitely. It's just my nature. So it's been an interesting road. Going back to 2000, when I outgrew the place, and I opened this amazing facility. When I needed to find a new lease, a new spot, keep in mind, in '95, I looked around and I looked around, and I didn't have the credit. I didn't know how much I could open. Everything was going to go towards rent. I didn't pay myself a dime for the first 5 years of the House of Champions. I
Mm,
did, however, survive nicely on private lessons. So keep in mind, while I'm trying to build a humble dojo, you know, um, I'm teaching many, many hours every day, driving around, going to people's homes, meeting them at the dojo, lessons and lessons and lessons. That's how I paid my rent. But at the time, I was single, no kids, and I needed 2 grand a month to live off of total with everything, right? So I'm like, I'm good, I'm good. So for 5 years, I didn't draw myself a nickel. But then at one point, I said, okay, it's time to start putting myself even my sister, who was my bookkeeper early on, I said, Lisa, I just need a check. I'm starting to lose my love for everything I do. Not that I needed the money as much as just to recognize
yeah,
myself.
the sign, the symbol.
What's my value?
Yeah.
You know, us as martial artists, we do things most of the time for free or because it's right. And many, many, many generations of martial artists never made money running dojos. The commercial world of dojos and UFC and Machados and Gracie brothers and these mega schools that are all over the world and all of that stuff wasn't around. Guy used to work in his shoe store 40 hours or 50 hours a week. And then when he got off at 5 o'clock, he'd go open his little dojo. Guy was a mechanic all day long, the sensei, and then he'd go, open his dojo at night and trying to raise his family and keep his wife off his back, because he's like, what are you doing that for? You're not making any money. What about your family? And they don't understand the heart and the mind of a martial artist or a sensei. That's another conversation we could have. But so, and then when I started was kind of the beginning of the new age of, hey, how can we live, not just survive, but thrive as martial arts instructors and as an industry, as a real legitimate industry. Now, there's no union, there's no government certification that says you're qualified underneath whatever, but your sensei's signature was all you needed. People don't say, oh, do you have your whatever? No, I'm a black belt under this, and that. Oh, okay. I mean, I don't think anybody looks for documents. They either know
Not
you
that I've
are or
ever
you're
heard
not.
of. No.
It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard if you're able to, we just see right through it. Other martial arts, like, this guy's crap. This guy's a clown. This stuff's crap. And not that we have to say, oh, our technique's better than the other, but just their philosophy about how they do martial arts, the Cobra Kai mentality. Guys that are out there still exist. They, no mercy and all that, but less and less. I think the more my style, Miyagi-Do kind of guy that mentors and takes a young person into their adulthood and shows them a way of life is more tempting for me as a father, to have a mentor that my son can be around for years and years and years. And unfortunately, if they're not good businessmen, as good as martial artists they are, that person still won't be there for you, because they don't have the skill set to keep their dojo open. So I'm very blessed and grateful and happy that I've been bestowed with certain skill sets, some better than others. But so that's what we do. 26 years. I've had thousands and thousands and thousands of students come through here. You can imagine. It's in the tens of thousands. I might even be more than that, but over 26 years, and I take great pride in the quality of what they get here. I tell the kids or the adults, I say, tell me one person that is or has been involved in your life besides your parents or your blood relatives that will teach and guide you for more than a season. A soccer coach, a baseball coach, a piano teacher, a great tutor. At the most, maybe a couple years, they're underneath somebody. Oh, I remember so and so. They were my favorite. I said, a sensei is a very special, a true sensei. Let me just say that. Not sensei. I don't want to use the word. A true sensei, teacher, will mentor and guide you for all of his days. Period. Not because I get a movie career, I'm going to give up my students or cash in on my dojo or stop teaching. A great instructor, master, grandmaster, like the great grandmaster Kokoi Kenyete. It's all day, every day. Even though you may do not technical teachings or things like that, but that's it. We sign up pretty much for life. Unless you leave, I'm not going nowhere. If you don't burn the bridge by doing something asinine where I can't have you around, like you're a threat or dangerous or you lose your mind, but I'll still be there for you once you get your mind back. And I can say, hey, yeah, none of us are perfect. I tell my students all day long, my halo has a lot of nicks and dings in it. Trust me. And I tell them too, guess what? So do your parents and so do your teachers. I don't care who they are. So get over the fact that, oh, my parents got divorced. Oh, well, that's a good reason for me to go be a little child for the rest of my life because my daddy's not around anymore or mommy left or whatever. I'm like, I'm sorry. I get it. I feel for you. I don't agree with it, but I'm into what can we do now? I had a mom tell me, well, my kid has some issues. He's always going to have these issues. He has anger issues, right? And he went off, and when he gets mad in sparring, he goes excessive and he has a meltdown. And the parent tell me, yeah, well, he has issues. I said, okay, well, guess what? When you're here, I get it. Um, I'm aware of it. I make my team aware of it. As the shepherd of the flock, I can't, just because your kid, I can't allow him to have a meltdown and hurt another student. Because he's on a meltdown, he's not hearing me. And if a teenager, when they have a meltdown, you can't, they need to walk it off. So there's ways we can deal with meltdown, but that skill set, we're just like, whoa. I teach. My bottom line is I teach them all the same. Oh, my kid has ADD. My kid has autism. My kid has Asperger's. My kid has issues with this. It's my girl. I'm like, hey, kids, let me tell you something here. Our black belt is one black belt. I don't have a woman's black belt test. I don't have a kid that has a little bit of struggles black belt test. It's black belt. You get treated the same. Quit telling your kid and giving them the crutch of, oh, it's okay for you to melt down because you have that issue and you're always going to have it. I'm like, why would you feed somebody that? You know what I mean? I wouldn't bring attention to that. I would just say, hey, look, let's deal with the issue. But that becomes a crutch. Like, oh, well, I have ADD, so I can go wild anytime I want. You know what I mean? Because my mom keeps telling me I do, and that's just my nature and da-da-da-da-da. So she accepts my meltdowns. And then you got a 40-year-old living at home with you that doesn't work, playing video games all day because they want the upper hand. I'm big on parenting when I teach. I just tell them how it is. I always tell the parents and the kids, I go, I'm like a payday bar. I'm salty on the outside, but I'm sweet and yummy in the middle.
I like that.
Yeah, yeah. And they like it. Most of the parents, they want discipline, they want structure, they want their kids to focus, they want their kids to be hard workers, all of those things. And they bring them to the dojo. This is what excites them. They want to learn how to kick and punch or do a choke or an arm bar, whatever it is, a takedown. And I want to hit hearts and minds, more than anything. And so I tell them at the end of the day, I could care less how good your kid throws that kick. Obviously I do because I'm a teacher, but my point is that's not my main purpose or my main ingredient. They're going to get good at it, Mom, trust me. But just keep in mind, that's not my priority. And I also let the parent know, hey, if you're bringing your kid here to me and you want to build, he has no discipline. He hits me. He calls me names and all that. He runs the friggin' show is what happens. And if I don't get what I want, I'm going to have a meltdown. And I'm going to break up the room and punch holes in my door because you making me come home at midnight. I told you, if you discipline me, I'm going to melt down. Okay, you took my phone, meltdown. I can't drive. Oh, that's a good meltdown. All of that. And in enabling that, I'm like, oh, heck no. Heck no, heck no. So we have these generation of kids that are terrorists. If they don't get what they want, they're going to have a meltdown. If they don't like what they hear, they're going to have a meltdown, and I'm just like, don't feed that, Mom, and then bring them to me and expect me to talk sense to them.
Sure. I suspect we have a number of listeners nodding along right now. You're certainly not alone in these thoughts, and I'm on board with a lot of what you're saying. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's look ahead. We've talked a lot about where you came from and utterly amazing story training at the Jet Center. I can't imagine how wonderful that was, and just the what sounds to be the random luck of ending up there. Just I'm jealous. And then
yes,
stepping into your own school and we spent some time with pretty powerful story that I think my major takeaway there is how dedicated you were. And, clearly that is the reason why you've stuck it out for so long. But let's shift gears towards the future, because through COVID, there were a lot of martial arts school owners who said, you know what, this is a good opportunity, and for some excuse for me to step away, for me to call it quits.
Bow out.
And
Bow out.
bow out, yeah.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
certainly did not do that. So I guess that leads me to the general question of, what are you looking towards in the future? You know, you're certainly not of the age where, you know, you're done,
No.
but you are old enough that if you said, I'm ready to call it good on this, putting in 26 years, you know, nobody would have, I don't think anybody would have said, you know, I don't understand that. You know, if at 40, at almost 42, if I said I'm retiring, you know, people look at me funny. You know, having put in the work that you did, I don't think anybody would have looked at you funny in doing that. So what is it that you are looking forward to? What are your goals? What are you know, just that general future approach, you know, what's coming?
Yeah. So, I'm in talks right now with my trademark attorney and all of that. We're in talks about how we could make a House of Champions franchise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Never, even when I go away, maybe as the day-to-day guy, I would not walk away from the legacy itself. It would be handed down to my top guy, my team, this particular facility. So I would feel confident in saying that House of Champions could go another 25 years and then 25 after that, and hopefully just be in stone, in this community and around other people that might be interested in upgrading or changing their format, school owners that are looking for a makeover from head to toe on how to put together a good, a great dojo, good systems. I know you have a lot of smart people out there that know how to do systems and make things work. But I think the secret sauce has to come from me. So my next chapter, kind of as a statesman, my athlete's gone. What's after that? My business person's kind of coming to hit the end of his run, and my statesman is kind of coming up. Let me give it to the next guys. I have a 13-year-old son who I would love to be involved at some level, but would never say, hey, put the pressure of him like, hey, you got to carry the torch, because I have a great guy here that would be my number one choice, and a great team that could handle it. But besides more of a House of Champions, I mentioned earlier, I'm involved in the movie industry. I have a current feature film project that's in development, and a show that's an episodic that's in development that we're currently getting close to putting all the pieces together for those things. So I would like to do content or material that has an impact, tell stories that have an impact or leave an impression in life, not just do a movie, a bunch of killing and who can kill the most people and be the baddest guy on the planet. I rather tell stories like mine, and give hope and insight to people that watch our shows, our films, and things like that. So that part of it's still in me. My two skill sets would be entertainment and martial arts. And to bring those two together at some point in any format is a current goal, way to get more exposure, way to turn people on, even like this interview, just turn people on to what we've talked about, over the last hour, and say, oh, wow, that's cool. Maybe it plants a seed in somebody, and they become the next Mark Parra, or the next House of Champions in their part of their world. I always tell my students that they asked Michelangelo years ago, how did you ever conceive the statue of David? And he said, I never did. David was already in the stone. All I did was chip away the excess. And I feel that is my mantra as a sensei. whether you're ADD, 5 years old, 50 years old, bad knees, bad attitude, bad whatever, it's in there. Let me help chip away until you can see it. And of course, the chunks come off big in the beginning, but the last, the later years, it's all detailing. I might just take a little nick off the side of the ear and then put my chisel down, and then I'll come back. And maybe I'm working more in the beginning. And then as you get to see, you become aware of the masterpiece within you. I don't think I ever really put my chisel down, though. Even with my guys now, grown men with families, I still have other ways to, work my chisel. Just subtle ways, ways to make them see it for themselves. So that's one of my things I use in the dojo.
I like it. Nice. And this feels like a good point for us to transition out. And I'm going to record the outro in a little bit, but I always like to give the guests the sort of I want to say the last words. That sounds so final, but a bit of advice or, last thoughts for the folks listening.
Okay, great.
I had a feeling you did. Let's hear it.
I have a great one. So I'll use a Bruce Lee quote. Bruce Lee said, "I do not pray for an easy life. I pray for the strength to endure a difficult one." Use that, my friends.
I told you during the intro, those were some stories, weren't they? Man, can you imagine randomly walking into a school and it being Benny the Jet School? I mean, just so cool. So cool. Thank you, Sensei. I appreciate you coming on the show and telling such wonderful stories. My mind is still reeling, even though we recorded this a little while ago. I'm just, wow. If you, the listener, want to go deeper on this episode, other episodes, go to whistlekickmartialartsradio.com. Check out the page for this episode, show notes, and eventually we add transcripts. We got photos and videos and links and all that good stuff over there. And if you're down to support us in all of our work, remember, we've got a bunch of choices. You can consider buying one of our Amazon books, telling people about the show, or consider supporting us at Patreon, patreon.com/whistlekick. And did you know we have the only speed development program for martial artists? Yep, I made it. You can get it, whistlekickprograms.com. And you have my word. If you follow this program, you will get faster, significantly faster. All the feedback on this program is through the roof. Don't forget the code podcast15. It's going to get you 15% off everything. And if you have guest suggestions, topic suggestions, let me know. Email me, jeremy@whistlekick.com. Our social media, the best place to stay up on what's going on. At Whistlekick everywhere you could think of. Until next time, train hard, smile, and have a great day.